A woman stood shaking at the altar of her own engagement party as her fiancé publicly destroyed her in front of 300 guests. But when she walked out into the rain alone, a black car pulled up beside her, and the man inside would change everything. This is a story about being discarded by the world and chosen by the most dangerous man in it. Stay until the end to see how this unfolds. Hit like and drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. The Ashford Grand Ballroom looked like something out of a magazine, all crystal chandeliers and ivory silk drapes, candles floating in glass centerpieces, a string quartet playing something soft and expensive in the corner. 300 people stood around in designer clothes, holding champagne flutes, pretending they weren't watching Mara Whitlock's life fall apart in real time. She stood at the front of the room in a pale blush gown that had taken her 3 months to save for, her hands trembling so badly she had to clasp them together just to keep from shaking apart. The engagement ring on her finger felt like it weighed 10 pounds. Her fiancé, Evan Cross, stood 3 feet away from her, his jaw tight, his eyes cold in a way she'd never seen before. "You can't be serious," Mara whispered, her voice cracked on the last word. Evan didn't even look at her. He was staring out at the crowd like he was giving a business presentation. "I am serious. I'm sorry, Mara, but I can't do this." Someone in the crowd gasped. The quartet stopped playing. Mara felt her chest tighten, felt the walls closing in. "Evan, please, not here. Let's go somewhere and talk." "There's nothing to talk about." His voice was flat, final. "I've thought about this for weeks. I can't marry you." Her throat burned. "Why?" He finally looked at her then, and the expression on his face was something she'd remember for the rest of her life. Not anger, not regret, just disgust. "Because I deserve better," he said quietly. "I work 60 hours a week. I built a company from the ground up. I have standards, Mara. And you," he gestured vaguely at her, his lip curling slightly, "you don't meet them." The room went silent. Mara felt like someone had just punched her in the stomach. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The words didn't make sense at first, and then they did, and that was worse. "What does that mean?" Her voice came out small, broken. Evan sighed like she was being difficult. "It means you've let yourself go. You don't take care of yourself. You're not what I thought you were." Mara's vision blurred. She heard someone whisper something behind her. Laughter, maybe, or pity, she couldn't tell. "I've been working 2 jobs, she said, her voice shaking. "I've been planning this whole party. I've been making excuses." Evan cut her off. "You always make excuses, Mara. That's the problem. You don't have discipline. You don't have drive. And honestly," he glanced at the crowd, then back at her, "I can't stand next to you at events anymore. I can't introduce you to my clients and feel proud. I just can't." The words hit her like bullets, each one tearing through something she didn't know could break. She looked around the room, all those faces staring at her. Some of them looked shocked. Some of them looked uncomfortable. But a few, just a few, looked satisfied, like they'd been waiting for this. Evan's mother stood near the back, her arms crossed, her mouth pressed into a thin line. She'd never liked Mara, never thought she was good enough for her son, and now she was watching her son prove it. Mara's best friend Jenna was standing near the bar with tears streaming down her face, but she wasn't moving, wasn't coming to help. No one was. "Take the ring off," Evan said. Mara's hand shook as she twisted the diamond band off her finger. It caught on her knuckle, and for a horrible moment she thought it wouldn't come off. But then it did, and she stood there holding it, staring at the tiny circle of gold and stone that was supposed to mean forever. Evan held out his hand. She dropped the ring into his palm without looking at him. "I'm sorry it had to be this way," he said, and he didn't sound sorry at all. He sounded relieved. Mara turned and walked toward the exit. Her heels clicked against the marble floor. No one stopped her. No one said a word. The doors swung shut behind her, and the noise of the ballroom cut off all at once. She stood in the hallway for a moment, staring at the elevator, trying to remember how to breathe. Her chest felt tight. Her throat ached. She wanted to scream. She wanted to cry. But nothing came out. The elevator doors opened and she stepped inside, pressed the button for the ground floor, watched the numbers tick down. When she stepped outside, the rain hit her like a wall. It was pouring, the kind of rain that soaked through clothes in seconds. Mara didn't have an umbrella, didn't have a coat. She just started walking. The streets were nearly empty, just a few cars passing by, their headlights cutting through the downpour. She walked past storefronts and bus stops and alleyways, her dress clinging to her legs, her hair plastered to her face. She didn't know where she was going, didn't care. Her phone buzzed in her purse. She pulled it out and saw a text from Jenna. "Mara, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Where are you?" She turned the phone off and shoved it back in her bag. She kept walking until her feet hurt, until her lungs burned, until she couldn't feel the cold anymore. And then a car pulled up beside her. It was black, sleek, expensive looking, the kind of car that didn't belong in this part of the city. The passenger window rolled down. Mara stopped walking. She stared at the car, her heart pounding. A man sat in the driver's seat, dark hair, sharp jawline, eyes that looked almost black in the dim light. He was wearing a suit, perfectly tailored, perfectly pressed. He didn't smile. "Get in," he said. Mara blinked. "What?" "You're soaked. You'll catch pneumonia." His voice was low, calm, like he was stating a fact, not offering help. "I don't know you." "No, but I know you." That sent a chill down her spine that had nothing to do with the rain. "How?" "I was at the party." He tilted his head slightly, studying her. "I saw what happened." Mara's stomach twisted. "Great. So you saw me get humiliated in front of half the city. Thanks for the reminder." "I saw a man make a mistake," the man said, "and I saw a woman walk away with her head up. That takes strength." She didn't know what to say to that. "Get in the car, Mara." Hearing her name from a stranger's mouth should have scared her. It didn't. Maybe because she was too numb to be scared. Maybe because she didn't care anymore. She opened the door and slid into the passenger seat. The car was warm, dry. It smelled like leather and something faintly woodsy. The man didn't say anything. He just started driving. Mara pulled her seatbelt on and stared out the window, watching the rain streak across the glass. "Where are we going?" she asked after a while. "Somewhere dry." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting right now." She turned to look at him, really look at him. He was older than her, maybe early 30s. His hands were steady on the wheel, his expression unreadable. He didn't look like someone who smiled much, didn't look like someone who did anything much except control every single thing around him. "Who are you?" Mara asked. "Dante Vale." The name hit her like a slap. Everyone in the city knew that name. Dante Vale. The man who owned half the real estate downtown. The man who had politicians and police chiefs on speed dial. The man people whispered about in bars and boardrooms, always looking over their shoulders first. He was a ghost, a legend, a nightmare, depending on who you asked. And he was sitting 2 feet away from her. "You're..." Mara's voice caught. "You're him." "I am." "Why did you pick me up?" "Because you needed help." "That's not a reason." Dante glanced at her just for a second before turning his eyes back to the road. "It's reason enough." They drove in silence for a while. Mara's mind raced. She should be terrified. She should jump out of the car at the next red light and run. But she didn't. Because honestly, what was the worst thing that could happen? She'd already lost everything that mattered. The car pulled up in front of a building she didn't recognize. Tall, modern, all glass and steel. Dante parked in an underground garage and got out without a word. Mara hesitated, then followed. They took an elevator up to the top floor. The doors opened directly into a penthouse. It was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, sleek furniture, dark wood and marble and soft lighting. It looked like something out of a movie. Dante walked to a cabinet and pulled out a towel. He handed it to her without looking at her. "Dry off. I'll get you something to wear." "I don't need..." "You're dripping on my floor." Mara looked down and realized he was right. There was a small puddle forming around her feet. She took the towel. Dante disappeared down a hallway and came back a minute later with a t-shirt and a pair of sweatpants. "Bathroom's through there. Change. Then we'll talk." Mara didn't argue. She went into the bathroom and locked the door behind her. She stared at herself in the mirror. Her makeup was smeared. Her hair was a mess. Her dress was ruined. She looked like a disaster. She peeled the wet fabric off and changed into the clothes Dante had given her. They were too big, but they were warm and dry, and that was all that mattered. When she came out, Dante was sitting on the couch, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He gestured to the seat across from him. Mara sat. "Why am I here?" she asked. "Because I have a proposition for you." Her stomach dropped. "I'm not that kind of proposition." Dante's voice was sharp, final. "I need a wife. You need a way out. We can help each other." Mara stared at him. "You're insane." "Maybe. You don't even know me." "I know enough." He took a sip of his drink. "I know you were engaged to a man who didn't deserve you. I know he humiliated you in front of everyone you know. I know you walked out of that room with more dignity than anyone else in it, and I know you have nowhere to go right now." Mara's throat tightened. "You don't know anything about me." "I know you're stronger than you think." Dante leaned forward slightly, his eyes locked on hers. "I'm not asking you to love me, Mara. I'm asking you to marry me. It's a contract, a partnership. You get security, protection, a roof over your head. I get a wife for appearances." "Why me?" "Because you're not like the women I usually meet. You're real. You've been through hell tonight, and you're still sitting here. That tells me everything I need to know." Mara's hands were shaking again. "This is crazy." "Yes. I can't just—" "You can." Dante set his glass down on the table. "Or you can walk out of here right now, go back to your apartment, and spend the next month wondering how you're going to pay rent while everyone in this city talks about what happened tonight. Your choice." Mara closed her eyes. She thought about Evan, about the way he'd looked at her, the way the whole room had looked at her. She thought about going home to her tiny apartment, crawling into bed and waking up tomorrow to a phone full of messages from people who wanted to know if she was okay, but didn't actually care. She thought about her mother, who'd tell her she should have tried harder, her coworkers, who'd whisper about her in the break room, her so-called friends, who'd post about her on social media and pretend it was concern. She thought about spending the rest of her life being the girl who got dumped at her own engagement party. "What do you get out of this?" she asked quietly. "Peace," Dante said. "I have people breathing down my neck about settling down, about being respectable. A wife makes me look stable, legitimate. I don't need love, Mara. I need the optics. And what do I get? A life, a real one. You'll have everything you need, a home, money, protection. No one will ever look at you the way they did tonight again. I'll make sure of it." Mara opened her eyes and looked at him. He wasn't lying. She could see that. He wasn't trying to charm her or manipulate her. He was just offering, like it was a business deal, which she supposed it was. "How long?" she asked. "As long as it takes. A year, maybe 2. We'll figure it out as we go." "And if I say no?" Dante shrugged. "Then I'll have my driver take you wherever you want to go. No hard feelings." Mara sat there for a long moment, staring at the floor, her mind racing. This was insane. Completely insane. But what did she have to lose? "Okay," she said finally. Dante raised an eyebrow. "Okay? I'll do it. I'll marry you." For the first time since she'd gotten in the car, Dante's expression shifted, just slightly, a flicker of something that might have been surprise or respect. "Good," he said. "We'll handle the paperwork tomorrow." "That fast?" "I don't waste time." Mara laughed, and it came out bitter. "Neither did my ex, apparently." Dante's jaw tightened. "He's an idiot. He's a bastard." "That too." They sat in silence for a moment. "Can I ask you something?" Mara said. "Go ahead." "Why do you really need a wife? You don't seem like the kind of man who cares what people think." Dante's eyes darkened. "I don't, but I have people I need to protect. A wife makes that easier. It keeps certain questions from being asked, certain doors from being opened." "What kind of doors?" "The kind you don't want to walk through." Mara nodded slowly. She didn't push. She had a feeling Dante Vale wasn't the kind of man who gave answers he didn't want to give. "Where will I stay?" she asked. "Here, with me. We'll keep separate rooms if that makes you more comfortable." "It does." "Fine." Dante stood and drained the rest of his whiskey. "There's a guest room down the hall, second door on the left. Get some sleep. We have a lot to do tomorrow." Mara stood as well, her legs unsteady beneath her. "Thank you for picking me up. For this. I don't know if it's the right choice, but thank you. Dante looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Don't thank me yet, he said quietly. You don't know what you're getting into. And then he turned and walked away, leaving Mara standing alone in the middle of a penthouse that didn't feel like home, wearing clothes that didn't belong to her, about to marry a man she didn't know. She should have been terrified, but all she felt was numb. The next morning, Mara woke up in a bed that was too soft, in a room that was too big, with sunlight streaming through windows she didn't recognize. For a moment, she forgot where she was, and then it all came rushing back. The party, Evan, the rain, Dante. She sat up slowly, her head pounding. Her phone was on the nightstand. She'd turned it back on before falling asleep, and now it was flooded with messages. 37 texts, 15 missed calls, a dozen voicemails. She scrolled through them, her stomach churning. Most of them were from people she barely knew, acquaintances from work, college friends she hadn't talked to in years. All of them wanted the story, wanted to know what happened, wanted the drama. There was one from Jenna. Please call me, I'm worried about you. Mara deleted it. There was nothing from Evan. She threw the phone across the bed and got up. The guest room was huge, bigger than her entire apartment. There was a walk-in closet, a private bathroom with a tub that could fit 3 people, and a balcony overlooking the city. She stood on the balcony for a while, staring out at the skyline, trying to make sense of everything. 24 hours ago, she'd been planning a wedding. Now she was planning a different one, to a man she'd met in the rain, a man who terrified half the city. It didn't feel real. A knock on the door pulled her out of her thoughts. Come in, she called. The door opened and Dante stepped inside. He was dressed in a different suit today, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored. He looked like he'd been awake for hours. Breakfast is ready, he said. I'm not really hungry. Eat anyway. We have a long day ahead of us. Mara sighed and followed him out of the room. The kitchen was just as impressive as the rest of the penthouse. All marble countertops and stainless steel appliances. There was a table set with coffee, toast, eggs, and fruit. Mara sat down and poured herself a cup of coffee. She took a sip and nearly groaned. It was perfect. You have good taste in coffee, she said. I have good taste in everything, Dante replied, sitting across from her. Mara raised an eyebrow. Confident. Realistic. They ate in silence for a while. Mara picked at her eggs, her mind still racing. What happens now? She asked finally. We go to the courthouse, sign the papers. You become Mrs. Vale. That's it? That's it. No ceremony? No witnesses? We'll have witnesses. The law requires it. But no ceremony. Unless you want one. Mara shook her head. I've had enough ceremonies to last a lifetime. Dante's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Fair enough. What do I tell people? My family? My friends? Tell them the truth. That you're married. They don't need to know the details. They'll ask questions. Let them. Mara set her coffee cup down. You make it sound so easy. It is easy. You just stop caring what they think. And you don't care? At all? Dante's expression darkened. I stopped caring about what people think a long time ago. There was something in his voice, something cold and final. Mara didn't push. They finished breakfast, and Dante handed her a small box. What's this? She asked. Open it. She did. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a thin gold band with a single diamond. Nothing flashy, nothing over the top, just beautiful. It was my grandmother's, Dante said quietly. She would have wanted someone to wear it. Mara stared at the ring, her throat tight. I can't take this. You're not taking it. You're wearing it. There's a difference. She slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Thank you, she whispered. Dante nodded. Let's go. The courthouse was busy, people rushing around with papers and lawyers and stressed expressions. Dante led Mara through the building like he owned it, and maybe he did. She wouldn't have been surprised. They signed the papers in a small office with 2 witnesses Dante had brought, both men in suits who looked like they'd never smiled a day in their lives. The whole thing took less than 20 minutes, and just like that, Mara Whitlock became Mara Vale. She stared at the marriage certificate, her hands shaking slightly. You okay? Dante asked. I just married a stranger, she said. So, no, not really. You'll get used to it. Will I? Dante didn't answer. They left the courthouse and got back in the car. Dante drove them back to the penthouse, and Mara spent the rest of the day in a daze. She unpacked the few things she had, clothes, toiletries, a couple of books. It didn't take long. She didn't have much. That night, she sat in the guest room and stared at the ring on her finger. She thought about Evan, about the way he'd looked at her, about the life she'd thought she was going to have. And then she thought about Dante, about the way he'd looked at her in the rain, like she was worth saving, like she mattered. She didn't know if this was the right choice, but it was the choice she'd made, and she was going to live with it. But the first week was strange. Dante was gone most of the time. He left early in the morning and came back late at night. Mara didn't ask where he went, didn't ask what he did. She had a feeling she didn't want to know. She spent her days exploring the penthouse, reading books from Dante's massive library, and trying not to think about the life she'd left behind. Her phone kept buzzing with messages, but she ignored them. Eventually, they stopped. Jenna called once. Mara didn't answer. On the 8th day, Dante came home early. Mara was in the kitchen making tea when he walked in. He looked tired, more tired than usual. Long day? She asked. You could say that. He poured himself a drink and leaned against the counter, watching her. What? Mara said. You're settling in. I guess. Good. He took a sip of his drink. We're going out tomorrow night. Mara blinked. Where? A charity gala. I need you there. Her stomach dropped. I'm not ready for that. You don't have to be ready. You just have to show up. Dante, I can't. You can. His voice was firm. This is part of the deal, Mara. I need a wife who can stand next to me at events. You agreed to that. Mara's hands tightened around her mug. What if I see him, Evan? Dante's expression hardened. Then you'll walk past him like he doesn't exist. And if he says one word to you, I'll handle it. How? However I need to. Mara didn't know if that made her feel better or worse. Fine, she said. I'll go. Dante nodded. I'll have something sent over for you to wear. I can dress myself. I'm sure you can, but this is important. I need you to look the part. Mara wanted to argue, wanted to tell him to go to hell, but she didn't because he was right. This was the deal. This was what she'd signed up for. Okay, she said quietly. Dante finished his drink and set the glass down. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long night. And then he was gone. Mara stood in the kitchen, staring at the empty glass, her heart pounding. She had no idea what she was walking into, but she had a feeling it was going to change everything. The dress arrived at noon in a black garment bag with no label. Mara unzipped it slowly, half expecting something ridiculous, sequins or feathers or some designer nightmare that would make her look like she was trying too hard. Instead, she found a floor-length gown in deep emerald green. The fabric was silk, heavy, and expensive, with a neckline that was elegant without being revealing. It was simple, understated, beautiful. She hated that Dante had good taste. She tried it on in her room, standing in front of the full-length mirror, and for the first time in 2 weeks, she didn't recognize herself. The woman staring back at her looked composed, put together, like someone who belonged at a charity gala with politicians and CEOs, like someone who could stand next to Dante Vale and not look out of place. She wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a terrifying one. At 6 o'clock, there was a knock on her door. It's open, she called. Dante stepped inside, and for a second, he just stopped. His eyes moved over her, slow and deliberate, and Mara felt her face heat. It fits, he said finally. You sound surprised. I'm not. He adjusted his cufflinks. Black suit tonight, crisp white shirt, no tie. He looked like he'd walked out of a magazine. You look good. Thanks. Mara smoothed down the front of the dress, suddenly self-conscious. You didn't have to spend this much money. I didn't ask what you thought I should spend. Dante, if you're going to be my wife, you're going to look like it. That's not negotiable. Mara bristled. I'm not a doll you get to dress up. No, you're a woman who deserves to walk into a room and have every person in it see that she belongs there. Dante's voice was quiet, but there was steel underneath it. Tonight, you're going to do exactly that. Mara opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. Because he was right, she did want that. She wanted to walk into a room and not feel like she had to apologize for existing. Fine, she muttered. Dante's mouth twitched. Let's go. The gala was being held at the Riverview Estate, a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of the city that had been converted into an event space for people with too much money and not enough problems. The driveway was lined with luxury cars, Bentleys and Maseratis, and one obnoxious yellow Lamborghini that made Mara roll her eyes. Dante's driver pulled up to the entrance and a valet opened Mara's door before she could reach for the handle. She stepped out onto the red carpet and immediately, cameras started flashing. Mara froze. Dante appeared beside her, his hand settling on the small of her back. Keep walking, he said quietly. Don't look at them. Look at me. She did. His eyes were steady, calm, like this was just another Tuesday. Breathe, he said. She took a breath and let him guide her up the steps and through the massive front doors. Inside, the place was even more obscene. Crystal chandeliers the size of cars. Marble floors so polished you could see your reflection. Waiters in white gloves carrying trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more than Mara's rent used to. People turned to look as they walked in. Mara felt their eyes on her like weights. Dante Vales, someone said loudly. Didn't think you'd show. A man in his 50s approached, gray hair slicked back, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He had the look of someone who'd bought his way into every room he'd ever been in. Richard, Dante said, his tone flat. Always a pleasure. Is it? Richard's eyes slid to Mara and his smile widened. And who's this? My wife. The word sent a ripple through the people nearby. Mara saw heads turn, heard the whispers start. Richard's eyebrows shot up. Your wife? I didn't know you were married. Now you do. Well, Richard extended a hand to Mara. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Vale. Mara shook his hand, her grip firm. Likewise. How long have you two been married? Not long, Dante said before Mara could answer. If you'll excuse us. He steered Mara away before Richard could say anything else. Friend of yours? Mara asked under her breath. He's a leech. Owns half the construction contracts in the city and thinks that makes him important. Does it? No. They moved through the crowd, and Mara tried not to stare at the people around her. She recognized some of them from the news. A state senator, a tech CEO, a woman who owned a chain of luxury hotels. And then she saw him, Evan. He was standing near the bar, a champagne flute in one hand, laughing at something a blonde woman next to him was saying. He looked exactly the same, smug, self-satisfied, like he'd never done anything wrong in his life. Mara's stomach twisted. Dante felt her tense. Where is he? 2 o'clock, by the bar. Dante's eyes flicked in that direction, and his jaw tightened. Do you want to leave? No? Mara's voice came out stronger than she expected. I'm not running from him. Good. Dante's hand moved to her waist, a subtle claim. Then we'll stay. They found a table near the back and sat down. A waiter brought them drinks. Whiskey for Dante, wine for Mara. She took a sip and tried to focus on anything other than the fact that Evan was 50 feet away. You're doing fine, Dante said quietly. I don't feel fine. You look it. That's all that matters. Mara glanced at him. Do you ever actually feel anything, or do you just fake it until people believe you? Dante's expression didn't change. I stopped feeling things a long time ago. It's easier that way. That's depressing. It's survival. Mara wanted to ask him what he meant by that, but a woman in a red dress approached their table before she could. Dante, the woman said, her voice dripping with familiarity. I heard you got married. I didn't believe it until I saw it with my own eyes. Dante's face remained impassive. Elena. Elena's gaze shifted to Mara, and her smile turned sharp. So you're the lucky girl. I'm his wife, Mara said evenly. If that's what you mean. Of course. Elena's eyes raked over her, assessing, judging. It's just such a surprise. Dante's always been so selective. Still am, Dante said, his tone cold. Which is why I married her. Elena's smile faltered. Well, congratulations. She walked away and Mara exhaled slowly. Ex-girlfriend? she asked. Something like that. She seems lovely. She's not. Mara laughed despite herself. You don't sugarcoat things, do you? Would you prefer I did? No. I've had enough people lie to me to last a lifetime. Dante's eyes met hers, and for a moment something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Or just mutual exhaustion. The evening dragged on. Mara made small talk with people whose names she immediately forgot. She smiled until her face hurt. She pretended she belonged there, and maybe, just for tonight, she did. And then Evan appeared. He walked up to their table like he had every right to be there, the blonde woman from earlier trailing behind him. Mara, he said, his voice fake friendly. I didn't expect to see you here. Mara's hand tightened around her wine glass. Funny. I could say the same about you. Evan's smile was tight. I'm here with a client, and you're here with... His eyes slid to Dante, and something flickered in his expression. Fear, maybe. Or respect. Dante Val, I've heard a lot about you. I'm sure you have, Dante said, his voice like ice. Evan cleared his throat. Mara, can we talk? Privately? No, Mara said. Come on, just for a minute. I think we... She said no. Dante's voice cut through the air like a knife. He didn't raise it, didn't move, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Evan's face flushed. I wasn't talking to you. You're talking to my wife. That means you're talking to me. The blonde woman tugged on Evan's arm. Maybe we should go. Evan ignored her. Look, I just wanted to apologize for how things ended. It wasn't... You stood in front of 300 people and told me I wasn't good enough for you, Mara said quietly. You humiliated me. You destroyed me. And now you want to apologize? I was under a lot of stress. I didn't mean... You meant every word. Mara stood, her hands shaking but her voice steady. You looked me in the eye and told me I was an embarrassment, that I didn't meet your standards. And you know what? You were right. Evan blinked. I was? I didn't meet your standards, because your standards are garbage. You wanted someone who would shrink herself to make you look bigger. Someone who would smile and nod and never ask for anything. And I'm not that person. I never was. Evan's jaw clenched. You've changed. No, I just stopped pretending to be someone I'm not. Is that what this is? Evan gestured at Dante. You married him to prove a point? I married him because he saw something in me that you never did. Mara's voice didn't waver. He saw that I was worth more than you ever gave me credit for. Dante stood then, moving to Mara's side. He didn't touch her, didn't say anything. He just stood there, a silent wall of support. Evan's eyes darted between them. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was wasting 2 years of my life on you, Mara said. Now get out of my sight. Evan opened his mouth to say something else, but Dante took a single step forward, and whatever words Evan had died in his throat. You heard her, Dante said softly. Leave. Evan left. The blonde woman scurried after him. Mara sat back down, her legs suddenly unsteady. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. You okay? Dante asked. I think so. She looked up at him. Thank you for backing me up. You didn't need me. You handled that yourself. I don't know about that. I do. Dante sat down across from her, his expression unreadable. You're stronger than you think, Mara. You just needed to remember that. Mara didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. They stayed at the gala for another hour. Mara felt lighter somehow, like she'd shed a weight she didn't know she was carrying. People still stared, but it didn't bother her as much. Let them stare. Let them wonder. She didn't owe them anything. When they finally left, the night air was cool and sharp. Mara stood on the steps of the mansion and took a deep breath. That wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, she said. You did well. I yelled at my ex-fiancé in front of half the city's elite. I'm not sure that qualifies as doing well. It does in my book, Mara smiled, a real smile. The first one in weeks. The ride home was quiet. Mara stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past. Dante sat beside her, as still and silent as ever. When they got back to the penthouse, Mara kicked off her heels the second they walked through the door. I hate fancy shoes, she muttered. Then don't wear them. Easy for you to say. You're not the one walking around in stilts. Dante's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Fair point. Mara poured herself a glass of water and leaned against the kitchen counter. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why did you really marry me? And don't give me that line about needing a wife for appearances. There's more to it than that. Dante was quiet for a long moment. He poured himself a drink and stared into the glass like it held answers. I told you I have people I need to protect, he said finally. You did. There are things in my life that I can't control, things that happened a long time ago that still haunt me. And having you here, having a wife, it keeps certain people from looking too closely at those things. What kind of things? Dante's jaw tightened. The kind that get people killed. Mara's stomach dropped. Dante? I'm not going to hurt you, Mara. You're safe here. But the world I live in isn't a kind one, and the people in it don't forgive mistakes. What happened? Dante looked at her then, really looked at her, and Mara saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Pain. Raw and deep and buried under layers of ice. I had a sister, he said quietly. Elara. She was younger than me, smart, funny. She wanted to be a doctor. Mara's breath caught. Had? She died 3 years ago because I wasn't careful enough, because I thought I could protect her from the life I'd built, and I was wrong. Dante, I'm so sorry. Don't be. It doesn't change anything. He drained his glass and set it down hard. After she died, I shut everything down. I stopped caring about anything except making sure no one else I cared about got hurt. And then I saw you, walking out of that party, soaked to the bone. And you reminded me of her. Mara's throat tightened. I did? Not in looks, in strength. Elara was stronger than anyone I knew. She didn't let people push her around. And when I saw you walk out of that room with your head up, even after what he did to you, I saw that same strength. So you married me because I reminded you of your sister? I married you because I needed to remember that there are still people in this world worth protecting. Dante's voice was rough, tired. And because you deserved better than what he gave you. Mara didn't know what to say. Her chest ached. For him, for the sister he'd lost, for the man he'd become because of it. Can I see her? She asked quietly. A picture of her? Dante hesitated, then nodded. Follow me. He led her down a hallway she hadn't been in before. At the end of it was a door closed and locked. Dante pulled a key from his pocket and opened it. The room inside was untouched. A bedroom, decorated in soft blues and whites. There was a desk with textbooks stacked neatly on top. A corkboard covered in photos. A bed with a quilt folded at the foot. Mara stepped inside slowly, like she was walking into a shrine. And maybe she was. Dante picked up a framed photo from the dresser and handed it to her. In it was a young woman with dark hair and a bright smile, her arm around Dante's shoulders. He looked younger in the photo, less guarded, almost happy. She was beautiful, Mara said softly. She was everything. Dante's voice cracked, just barely. And I let her down. You didn't. I did. He took the photo back and set it down carefully. She trusted me to keep her safe, and I failed. That's not something I can fix. It's not something I can take back. Mara reached out and touched his arm. You can't blame yourself forever. Yes, I can. They stood there in silence for a while, surrounded by the ghost of a girl who'd been loved and lost. Finally, Dante stepped back. We should go. Mara followed him out, and he locked the door behind them. Back in the main living area, Mara sat down on the couch, her mind racing. Thank you, she said, for showing me that, for telling me. Dante nodded but didn't say anything. Can I ask you something else? You're full of questions tonight. Humor me. Fine. Do you think you'll ever let yourself care about someone again? Or is this it? Just walls and distance and keeping everyone at arm's length? Dante looked at her, and for the first time Mara saw something crack in his expression. Just a little. Just enough. I don't know, he said honestly. I don't know if I remember how. Maybe you don't have to remember, Mara said quietly. Maybe you just have to start. Dante didn't answer. He just stared at her, his dark eyes unreadable. and then he turned and walked away. Mara sat there alone, staring at the spot where he'd been standing, her heart pounding. She was starting to realize something she hadn't expected. This marriage wasn't just a contract anymore. It was becoming something real, and that terrified her more than anything else. The next few days passed in a strange kind of rhythm. Dante was still gone most of the time, but when he came home, he didn't disappear into his office like he used to. He'd sit in the living room with a drink, and Mara would join him, and they'd talk. Not about anything important, just things. Books they'd read, movies they hated, stupid stories from their childhoods. It was easy, comfortable, and Mara found herself looking forward to those moments more than she wanted to admit. One night, she was curled up on the couch with a book when Dante came home earlier than usual. "You're back early," she said, looking up. "Finished early." He shrugged off his jacket and loosened his tie. "What are you reading?" "Murder mystery. It's terrible." "Then why are you reading it?" "Because sometimes terrible things are exactly what you need." Dante's mouth twitched. "Fair enough." He poured himself a drink and sat down in the chair across from her. "Can I ask you something?" Mara said. "You always do." "Do you regret it? Marrying me?" Dante looked at her, his expression serious. "No." "Not even a little?" "Not even a little." "Why not?" "Because you're not what I expected." He took a sip of his drink. "I thought this would be transactional, simple. But you've made it complicated." "Is that a bad thing?" "I don't know yet." Mara closed her book. "For what it's worth, I don't regret it either." No, I mean, this whole thing is insane, but you've given me something I didn't have before." "What's that?" "A reason to stop feeling sorry for myself." Dante's eyes softened, just a fraction. "You were never someone who needed pity, Mara. You just needed someone to remind you of that." Mara felt her chest tighten. "You keep saying things like that." "Because they're true." They sat in silence for a while, the air between them heavy with things neither of them knew how to say. "I'm going to bed," Mara said finally, standing. "Good night, Dante." "Good night." She walked down the hallway toward her room, her heart pounding. She was falling for him. She didn't know when it had started. Maybe it had been that first night in the rain. Maybe it had been at the gala, when he'd stood beside her without question. Maybe it had been tonight, when he'd looked at her like she was something worth keeping. But it was happening, and she had no idea what to do about it. Mara woke up the next morning to the smell of coffee and something burning. She stumbled out of bed, pulled on a robe, and followed the smell to the kitchen. Dante was standing at the stove, staring down at a pan of what might have once been eggs. Now they were just a blackened mess stuck to the bottom. "What are you doing?" Mara asked. Dante looked up, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked genuinely embarrassed. "Attempting to cook." Attempting being the key word. "I don't usually cook." "I can tell." Mara walked over and peered into the pan. "What were these supposed to be?" "Scrambled eggs." "They look more like scrambled charcoal." Dante's jaw tightened. "I was trying to do something nice." Mara felt her chest warm. "You were?" "Don't make a big deal out of it." Too late. She took the pan from him and tossed it in the sink. "Go sit down. I'll make breakfast." "You don't have to— Sit down." Dante actually listened. He poured himself coffee and sat at the table, watching her move around the kitchen. Mara cracked fresh eggs into a clean pan, added butter, and started whisking. "You know, for someone who runs half the city, you're surprisingly bad at basic life skills." "I have people who cook for me." "And where are these people now?" "I gave them the week off." "Why?" Dante was quiet for a moment. "Because I thought it would be nice. Just the two of us." Mara's hand stilled on the whisk. She turned to look at him. "You wanted time alone with me." "Is that so strange?" "Yes. You've barely been home for the past 3 weeks. I've been dealing with things." "What kind of things?" Dante's expression darkened. "The kind I don't want you involved in." Mara turned back to the stove, her stomach twisting. She plated the eggs, added toast, and set everything on the table. They ate in silence for a while. "These are good," Dante said finally. "They're just eggs." "Still good." Mara smiled despite herself. You're not used to people doing things for you, are you? No? Why not? Because I don't trust most people enough to let them. And you trust me? Dante looked at her, his dark eyes steady. I'm starting to. Mara's breath caught. She didn't know what to say to that, so she just took another bite of toast and tried to ignore the way her heart was racing. After breakfast, Dante disappeared into his office for a few hours. Mara wandered around the penthouse, restless. She'd read most of the books in the library. She'd explored every room except Alara's, which felt off-limits, even though Dante had shown it to her. She ended up on the balcony, staring out at the city, when her phone rang. It was Jenna. Mara stared at the screen for a long moment, then answered. Hello? Oh my God, Mara. You picked up. I've been calling for weeks. I know. Are you okay? Where are you? Everyone's been asking about you. I'm fine. Fine, you disappeared after the engagement party. No one's heard from you. There are rumors. What kind of rumors? Jenna hesitated. That you're married. To Dante Vale. Mara closed her eyes. Of course. It's true. What? I married him. Mara, what the hell? How did that even happen? It's complicated. Complicated? You married one of the most dangerous men in the city and you're calling it complicated? He's not dangerous. Not to me. How do you know that? Because he's been nothing but good to me since the night Evan humiliated me in front of everyone. Mara's voice came out sharper than she intended. Which, by the way, you were there for, and you didn't do anything. Jenna was quiet. I didn't know what to do. You could have stood by me. You could have walked out with me. Instead, you just stood there. I'm sorry. I was in shock. We all were. Yeah, well, I don't need your apology now. Mara, come on. Don't be like this. I'm your friend. Are you? Because friends don't abandon each other when things get hard. I didn't abandon you. You didn't help me either. There was a long silence. Can we at least meet for coffee? Jenna asked finally. Talk about this in person. I don't think that's a good idea. Please, Mara, I miss you. Mara felt something crack in her chest. She did miss Jenna, missed having someone to talk to who wasn't Dante, but she also couldn't forget the way Jenna had just stood there while Mara's world fell apart. I'll think about it, Mara said. Okay, that's fair. I have to go. Mara? Mara hung up before Jenna could finish. She sat on the balcony for a long time after that, her phone in her lap, her mind racing. When she went back inside, Dante was in the living room, a file folder open on the coffee table in front of him. Everything okay? He asked without looking up. Jenna called. What did she want? To talk. She wants to meet for coffee. Are you going to? I don't know. Mara sat down on the couch. Part of me wants to. Part of me never wants to see her again. Dante closed the folder and looked at her. What's stopping you? She didn't help me. That night, she just stood there and watched. People freeze. It doesn't always mean they don't care. You sound like you're defending her. I'm not. I'm just saying that not everyone knows how to handle a crisis. Some people run toward it. Some people run away. And some people just stand there. Mara pulled her knees up to her chest. Which one are you? I run toward it. Always have. Why? Because running away never solved anything. Mara rested her chin on her knees. Do you think I should meet her? I think you should do whatever feels right to you, not what you think you're supposed to do, not what makes other people comfortable, what feels right. Mara looked at him. When did you get so wise? Dante's mouth twitched. I'm not wise. I'm just old. You're not old. I feel old. That's different. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Mara found herself watching him, the way his shoulders relaxed when he wasn't working, the way his hands moved when he poured himself a drink. Can I ask you something? She said. You're going to anyway. Do you ever regret the life you chose? The business you're in? Dante's expression went cold. Every day. Then why don't you get out? Because it's not that simple. People depend on me. If I walk away, they're vulnerable, and I won't let that happen. Even if it costs you everything? Even then, Mara's chest ached. That's a lonely way to live. I know. It doesn't have to be. Dante looked at her, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Doesn't it? Before Mara could answer, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his whole demeanor changed. His jaw tightened. His eyes went hard. "I have to take this," he said, standing. "Is everything okay?" "I don't know yet." He walked into his office and closed the door. Mara sat there alone, staring at the closed door, a bad feeling settling in her stomach. An hour later, Dante came out. He looked tired, more than tired. He looked like he'd just had the weight of the world dropped on his shoulders. "What happened?" Mara asked. "There's a problem. With some people I used to work with." "What kind of problem?" "The kind that doesn't go away quietly." Mara stood. "Dante, talk to me. What's going on?" He ran a hand through his hair, and for the first time Mara saw him rattled. "There's a man, Viktor Melnikov. He used to be a business partner. We had a falling out a few years ago. He's been quiet since then, but apparently he's decided to make noise again." "What does that mean?" "It means he's coming after me, and anyone associated with me." Mara's blood ran cold. "Does that include me?" Dante's eyes met hers, and she saw the answer before he said it. "Yes." "Dante, I won't let him touch you. I'll handle this." "How?" "However I need to." Mara grabbed his arm. "Don't do something stupid. Don't do something that's going to get you killed." "I'm not going to get killed. You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Dante's voice was firm, final. "I've been doing this a long time, Mara. I know how to handle men like Viktor. That doesn't make me feel better. I'm not trying to make you feel better. I'm trying to keep you safe. By putting yourself in danger, if that's what it takes." Mara felt tears sting her eyes. "I don't want you to do this." "It's not your choice." "Like hell it's not. I'm your wife, Dante. I have a say in this." "You're my wife on paper. That doesn't mean you get to dictate how I run my life." The words hit Mara like a slap. She dropped his arm and took a step back. "Right," she said quietly. "On paper, I forgot." Dante's expression shifted. "Mara, no, you're right. This is just a contract, just a business arrangement. I shouldn't have thought it was anything more." "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Dante opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked lost, like he didn't know what to say. "Forget it," Mara said. She turned and walked toward her room. "Mara, wait." She didn't wait. She went into her room and closed the door behind her. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands shaking, her chest tight. She'd been an idiot. She'd let herself believe that this was real, that Dante cared about her, that they were building something together. But they weren't. They were just two people living in the same space, pretending to be something they weren't. There was a knock on the door. "Go away," Mara called. "We need to talk." "I don't want to talk to you." "Mara, please." She didn't answer. After a moment, she heard footsteps retreating down the hall. Mara lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling, willing herself not to cry. She wouldn't cry over another man who didn't see her worth. She was done with that. The next morning, Mara woke up to an empty apartment. There was a note on the kitchen counter in Dante's handwriting. "Had to take care of something. Be back tonight. Stay inside. Don't open the door for anyone." Mara crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. She spent the day pacing the penthouse, her mind racing. She tried to read, tried to watch TV. Nothing worked. She kept thinking about Dante, about Viktor, about what might be happening. By the time the sun set, she was ready to climb the walls. At 8 o'clock, there was a knock on the door. Mara froze. Dante had a key. He wouldn't knock. She walked to the door slowly, her heart pounding, and looked through the peephole. A man stood in the hallway, tall, blonde, wearing an expensive suit. He smiled at the peephole like he knew she was watching. "Mrs. Vale," he called, "I know you're in there. Open the door. I just want to talk." Mara's stomach dropped. "I don't know you," she called back. "No, but I know your husband, and I think he'd be very interested in what I have to say." "He's not here." "I know. That's why I'm here now." Mara's hand shook. "I'm calling the police." The man laughed. "Go ahead. They won't come. Not for me." Mara backed away from the door, her phone in her hand. She dialed Dante's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. "Pick up," she whispered. "Please pick up." He didn't. The knocking got louder. "Mrs. Vale, don't be difficult. Just open the door. 5 minutes. That's all I need." Mara's mind raced. The penthouse had a panic room. Dante had shown it to her the first week. just in case. She ran to the bedroom, pressed the hidden panel, and slipped inside. The door sealed shut behind her. She could hear the man's voice, muffled now, still talking, still knocking. And then she heard something worse. The sound of the front door opening. He'd gotten in. Mara's breath came in short gasps. She dialed Dante again, her hand shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. This time he answered. Mara? There's someone in the apartment, she whispered. He got in. I'm in the panic room. Stay there. Do not open that door. I'm on my way. Dante? I'm 10 minutes out. Just stay calm. The line went dead. Mara sat in the dark, clutching her phone, listening to the footsteps in the penthouse. She could hear the man moving through the rooms, opening doors, calling her name. Mrs. Vale, come out. I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to deliver a message. Mara pressed herself against the wall, her heart hammering. Your husband thinks he's untouchable. He thinks he can do whatever he wants without consequences. But he's wrong, and you're the proof of that. The footsteps stopped outside the bedroom. Mara held her breath. I know you're in there, the man said softly. You think Dante can protect you. But he can't even protect himself. When Victor's done with him, there won't be anything left. And you'll be all alone. Just like his sister. Mara's blood ran cold. That's right. I know about Alara. Dante probably told you it was an accident, that she died because he couldn't save her. But that's not the whole truth, is it? She died because Victor wanted to send a message, and now he's sending another one. Mara's hands clenched into fists. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell Dante to back off, to leave Victor alone, or you're going to end up just like her. Understand? Mara didn't answer. The man waited for a moment, then laughed. Silent treatment. I respect that. But think about what I said. Dante's not worth dying for. The footsteps retreated. Mara heard the front door open and close. She sat in the dark, shaking, tears streaming down her face. Minutes later, the penthouse door burst open again. Mara! Dante's voice, sharp and panicked. Mara opened the panic room door and stumbled out. Dante was across the room in seconds, pulling her into his arms. Are you hurt? He demanded, his hands moving over her, checking for injuries. I'm fine. He didn't get in. I just heard him. Dante's jaw clenched. What did he say? Mara told him everything, every word. By the time she finished, Dante's face was like stone. Victor sent him, he said quietly. I figured. He's escalating, faster than I thought. Dante, he said Alara didn't die in an accident. He said Victor killed her. Dante's eyes went dark, dangerous. He did. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you to know what kind of monster I'm dealing with. I need to know. I need to know everything. Dante pulled away from her, pacing. Victor and I used to work together. He handled the east side, I handled the west. We had an agreement, but Victor got greedy. He started moving into my territory, taking over businesses that were under my protection. I told him to back off. He didn't listen, so I cut him out. Took everything he had. And he killed your sister in retaliation. Yes, Dante's voice broke. She was supposed to be safe. She wasn't involved in any of it. But Victor didn't care. He wanted to hurt me, and he knew exactly how to do it. Mara's chest ached. Dante, I should have killed him then. I should have ended it, but I didn't. I thought if I just stayed away, if I kept my head down, he'd leave me alone. I was wrong. What are you going to do now? Dante looked at her, and the expression on his face was terrifying. I'm going to finish what I should have finished 3 years ago. You're going to kill him. Yes. Dante, no. That's not... It's the only way, Mara. He won't stop. Not until one of us is dead. And I won't let it be me. I won't let him hurt you. There has to be another way. There isn't. Mara grabbed his hands. Please, don't do this. Don't throw your life away for revenge. This isn't revenge. This is survival. It's murder. It's justice. It's going to destroy you. Dante pulled his hands free. I'm already destroyed. I have been since the day Alara died. This won't change that. Yes, it will, because I'm here now, and I'm not going to let you do this alone. Dante stared at her. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm not leaving. I'm not running. Whatever you're planning, I'm part of it. Because you're not just some name on a marriage certificate to me anymore. You're... She stopped, her voice catching. I'm what? You're someone I care about. And I'm not going to stand by and watch you destroy yourself. Dante's expression cracked. Mara, I mean it, Dante. I'm staying, whether you like it or not. For a long moment, Dante just looked at her. And then, slowly, he reached out and cupped her face in his hands. You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met, he said quietly. I've heard that before. It's not a compliment. I'll take it as one anyway. Dante's thumb brushed across her cheek, and Mara's breath hitched. I don't deserve you, he said. Probably not. But I'm not letting you go. Good. Because I'm not going anywhere. And then Dante kissed her. It wasn't soft. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and raw and full of everything they hadn't said. Mara kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. This complicates things, Dante said. I know. Victor's still out there. I know. I still have to deal with him. I know, but you're not doing it alone. Dante pressed his forehead against hers. I don't know how to do this. How to care about someone and keep them safe at the same time. You figure it out. We figure it out. Together. Dante pulled her close, holding her like she was the only thing keeping him anchored. And maybe she was. Because for the first time in 3 years, Dante Vale wasn't alone. And neither was Mara. They didn't sleep that night. Dante made calls. A lot of them. His voice was low and clipped as he spoke to people Mara couldn't see, arranging things she didn't fully understand. She sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching him pace back and forth across the living room. When he finally hung up, it was almost 3 a.m. What now? Mara asked. Dante rubbed his face, exhaustion written in every line of his body. Now we wait. For what? For Victor to make his next move. He sent that man to scare you, to send a message. He'll expect me to react, to come at him with everything I have. And you're not going to? I am. Just not the way he expects. Dante sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. I have people watching his operations. Every warehouse, every contact, every move he makes. When he slips up, and he will, I'll be ready. How long will that take? Could be days, could be weeks. Mara's stomach twisted. And in the meantime, we just sit here? You sit here. I have work to do. No. Dante looked at her. Mara. I said no. You're not shutting me out. Not after everything you just told me. This isn't your fight. It became my fight the second that man showed up at our door and threatened me. Mara's voice was steady, even though her hands were shaking. You said Victor wants to hurt you by going after the people you care about. Well, I'm one of those people now. So either you let me help or you're just putting me in more danger by keeping me in the dark. Dante stared at her for a long moment. You don't know what you're asking. Then tell me, if this goes wrong, if Victor gets to you before I can stop him, you won't just be hurt. You'll be dead. That's not an exaggeration. That's not me trying to scare you. That's the reality of the world I live in. I know. Do you? Because you're sitting here talking about helping like this is some kind of adventure. It's not. It's ugly and brutal, and people die. Good people. People who don't deserve it. Like Alara. Dante flinched. Yes, like Alara. Mara reached out and took his hand. I'm not Alara, Dante. I'm not 19 and naive. I know what I'm walking into, and I'm choosing to walk into it anyway, because you need someone on your side, and because I... She stopped, her throat tight. Because you what? Because I care about you. The words came out quieter than she intended. More than I should. More than I plan to. And I'm not going to sit in this penthouse like some damsel in a tower while you go out there and risk your life. Dante's grip on her hand tightened. If something happens to you, it won't. You can't promise that. Neither can you, but we're in this together now. Like it or not. Dante looked at her, and something in his expression shifted, softened. You're infuriating. I've been told. And reckless. That too. And completely insane for wanting to be part of this. Probably. Mara leaned her head against his shoulder. But I'm not changing my mind. Dante was quiet for a moment. Then he pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Okay. Okay? You're right. You're safer with me than without me. And I need someone I can trust. So okay. You're in. Mara felt something loosen in her chest. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You might regret this. I doubt it. They sat there in silence, the city lights glittering through the windows, the weight of what was coming settling over them like a storm cloud. The next morning, Dante took Mara to a building she'd never seen before. It was in the industrial district, all concrete and steel, with no signs or windows. He parked in an underground garage and led her through a series of locked doors that required keycards and fingerprint scanners. What is this place? Mara asked. Somewhere safe. Somewhere Victor doesn't know about. They took an elevator down 2 levels and stepped out into what looked like a command center. There were monitors lining the walls showing live feeds from cameras all over the city. 3 men sat at computers, typing and talking into headsets. One of them looked up when Dante walked in. He was older, maybe late 50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes. Boss, didn't expect you to bring company. Marco, this is Mara, my wife. Marco's eyebrows shot up. Your wife? Huh. He stood and extended a hand. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Vale. Mara shook it. Just Mara. Mara, then. Marco gestured to the screens. Welcome to the nerve center. We've been tracking Victor's movements for the past 12 hours. He's been busy. Show me, Dante said. Marco pulled up a map on the central monitor. Red dots marked locations all over the city. He's consolidating, pulling his people in from the outer territories. Whatever he's planning, it's big. Any word on where he's staying? Not yet. He's smart, keeps moving, never stays in one place more than a few hours. Dante's jaw tightened. Keep looking. I want to know every place he goes, every person he talks to. If he so much as sneezes, I want to know about it. You got it. Dante turned to Mara. There's a room in the back. You can wait there. I'm not waiting in a room, Dante. I said I wanted to help. And you are, by staying alive. I can do more than that. Marco cleared his throat. Actually, boss, she might be useful. Dante shot him a look. How? Victor knows you. He knows how you operate, but he doesn't know her. If we need someone to get close to one of his people, someone he won't recognize, she could be an asset. Absolutely not. Dante, Mara started. I said no, I'm not putting you in the field. Why not? You just said I'm in this now. Being in this doesn't mean throwing yourself into danger. That's exactly what it means. Mara crossed her arms. You said Victor's smart. He's not going to make a mistake unless we force him to. And the only way to do that is to throw him off balance. Let me help. Dante looked at her, frustration and something else. Fear, maybe, flashing in his eyes. You have no training, no experience. If something goes wrong, then you'll be there. You said it yourself. I'm safer with you than without you. Marco watched the exchange with interest. She's got a point, boss. Stay out of this, Marco. Just saying. Dante turned back to Mara. If I agree to this, and that's a big if, you do exactly what I tell you. No improvising. No taking risks. You follow my lead. Fine. I mean it, Mara. I know. Dante ran a hand through his hair, clearly hating every second of this. We'll start small, see how you handle it. But the second I think you're in over your head, you're out. Understood? Understood, Marco grinned. I like her, boss. She's got guts. She's going to give me a heart attack, Dante muttered. Over the next few days, Mara learned more about Dante's world than she'd ever wanted to know. She sat in on meetings with men who looked like they'd kill someone without blinking. She watched surveillance footage of Victor's people moving shipments, making deals, intimidating business owners. She listened to Dante strategize, his mind working 3 steps ahead of everyone else in the room. And she realized just how good he was at this, how completely in control he was, even when everything around him was chaos. But she also saw the toll it took on him, the way his shoulders tensed when a call came in, the way he barely slept, always waiting for the next move, the way he looked at her sometimes, like he was memorizing her face in case he never saw her again. One night, they were back at the penthouse, going over files Marco had sent. Dante was at the table, his laptop open, his eyes scanning documents. Mara sat across from him, nursing a glass of wine. Can I ask you something? She said. Go ahead. Why do you keep doing this, running this operation, dealing with people like Victor? You said yourself you regret it, so why not just walk away? Dante didn't look up from the screen. I told you, people depend on me. But who takes care of you? That made him pause. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. No one. That's not true. Isn't it? I'm here. Dante closed his laptop. You shouldn't be. You should be somewhere safe, living a normal life, not sitting in a penthouse with a man who has more enemies than friends. Maybe I don't want a normal life. Everyone wants a normal life, Mara. They just don't realize it until it's too late. Is that what happened to you? You didn't realize what you wanted until it was too late? Dante was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. I wanted to be a lawyer. Did I ever tell you that? Mara blinked. No. I was in law school when my father died. He ran the family business, same one I run now. When he was gone, there was no one else to take over. My mother couldn't do it. Alara was too young, so I stepped in, dropped out of school, took over everything, and I told myself it was temporary, that I'd go back once things settled down. But you didn't. No, because things never settled down, and the longer I stayed, the harder it was to leave. People started depending on me. Businesses under my protection. Families who needed someone to stand between them and people like Victor. And I couldn't just walk away from that. Even though it cost you everything. Even though. Dante leaned back in his chair, his eyes tired. I used to think I was doing the right thing, protecting people, keeping the city from falling apart. But now I don't know. Maybe I'm just as bad as the people I'm fighting against. You're not. How do you know? Because bad people don't question whether they're bad. They just are. Mara reached across the table and took his hand. You're trying, Dante. That has to count for something. Dante looked down at their joined hands. You have too much faith in me. Maybe you don't have enough faith in yourself. He smiled, just a little. How did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I just know what it's like to feel like you're not good enough. And I know what it's like to have someone tell you that you are. Dante's grip on her hand tightened. You are, good enough. More than good enough. Mara felt her throat tighten. So are you. They sat there for a while, just holding hands across the table, the silence comfortable and warm. And then Dante's phone rang. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his whole body went rigid. What is it? Mara asked. Victor. Dante answered the call, putting it on speaker. I was wondering when you'd have the guts to call me yourself. Victor's voice came through, smooth and cold. Dante, it's been too long. Not long enough. I hear you've been busy, watching my operations, tracking my people. You always were thorough. And you always were predictable. Victor laughed. Predictable. That's rich coming from the man who married a stranger, just to look respectable. Dante's jaw clenched. Leave her out of this. Why would I do that? She's the best part. I have to admit, I didn't think you had it in you. Moving on after Alara. I'm impressed. Say your name again and I'll kill you myself. You've been threatening to kill me for 3 years, Dante, and yet here I am. Not for long. Is that a fact? Because from where I'm sitting, you're the one who's vulnerable. You've got a wife now, someone you care about. That makes you weak. It makes me motivated. Same thing. Victor paused. I'll make this simple. You have something I want. Territory, contacts, leverage. Give it to me and I'll leave you and your lovely wife alone. Refuse and I'll make sure she ends up just like your sister. Slow, painful, and entirely your fault. Mara's stomach churned, but she kept her face blank. Dante's voice was ice. I'm not giving you anything. Then you've made your choice. So have you. I guess we have. See you soon, Dante. The line went dead. Dante sat there for a moment, staring at the phone, his breathing controlled but his eyes blazing. He's baiting you, Mara said quietly. He wants you to react, to make a mistake. I know. So what are we going to do? Dante looked at her, and the expression on his face was pure determination. We're going to end this, once and for all. The next 48 hours were a blur. Dante mobilized every resource he had. Marco's team worked around the clock, tracking Victor's movements, cross-referencing contacts, looking for any weakness they could exploit. And they found one. Boss, you're going to want to see this, Marco said, pulling up a file on the monitor. Dante and Mara leaned in. Victor's been using a shell company to move money. We traced it back to a warehouse on the east side. Shipping records show a major delivery coming in tomorrow night. Whatever he's planning, it's happening then. What kind of delivery? Dante asked. Weapons. A lot of them. Dante's eyes narrowed. He's gearing up for a war. Looks like it. Then we hit him before he's ready. Tomorrow night. We take the shipment, cut off his supply, and force him into the open. Marco nodded. I'll get the team ready. Good. Dante turned to Mara. You're staying here. No. Mara, I said no. You promised I could help. This is how I help. This isn't reconnaissance. This is a raid. People are going to get hurt, possibly killed. I know, and I'm still coming. Dante looked like he wanted to argue, but Marco cut in. Actually, boss, she could be useful. If we need someone to blend in, get eyes inside before we move, she's perfect. Victor's people don't know her. They won't see her coming. Dante's hands clenched into fists. If anything happens to her, it won't. I'll make sure of it. Dante looked at Mara, conflict written all over his face. You're sure about this? I'm sure. Okay. But you stay behind me. You don't take any risks, and if I tell you to run, you run. No questions. Deal. The warehouse was in a part of the city that looked like it had been forgotten. Crumbling buildings, broken streetlights, trash piled in the gutters. Dante's team arrived just after midnight, moving through the shadows like ghosts. Mara wore dark clothes and a jacket that was too big for her, her hair pulled back, her heart hammering in her chest. Dante stayed close to her, his hand on the small of her back, guiding her through the maze of alleys and side streets. You okay? He whispered. Yeah. If you want to back out, I don't. He nodded, then signaled to Marco. The team split up, surrounding the warehouse from all sides. Mara and Dante approached the side entrance. Dante picked the lock in seconds, and they slipped inside. The warehouse was massive, filled with crates and pallets stacked to the ceiling. Dim lights flickered overhead. Voices echoed from the far end. Dante motioned for Mara to stay low. They crept forward, using the crates for cover. And then Mara saw them. Victor's men, at least a dozen of them, unloading crates from a truck. Weapons, just like Marco had said. Rifles, handguns, ammunition. Dante pulled out his phone and sent a text. Within seconds, Marco and the rest of the team moved in. It happened fast. Too fast for Mara to process. Shouts. Gunfire. The sound of fists hitting flesh. Dante pulled Mara behind a crate, shielding her with his body. Stay down. She nodded, her hand shaking. The fight was brutal. Dante's men were outnumbered, but they were better trained. They moved with precision, taking down Victor's people one by one. And then Mara saw him. Victor. He was standing at the back of the warehouse, watching the chaos with a cold smile. He looked exactly like she'd imagined. Tall, blonde, handsome in a way that made her skin crawl. Dante saw him too. Stay here, he told Mara, his voice hard. Dante. But he was already moving. Mara watched as Dante crossed the warehouse, his focus locked on Victor. The two men stood facing each other, and for a moment everything else seemed to stop. Dante, Victor said, his voice carrying over the noise. I was hoping you'd show. This ends tonight, does it? Because from where I'm standing, you're the one who's outmatched. Am I? Victor gestured to the warehouse. Your men are good, but mine are loyal, and loyalty is worth more than skill. Loyalty built on fear doesn't last. Neither does loyalty built on lies. Victor's smile widened. Did you tell her? Your wife? Did you tell her what really happened to Alara? Dante's whole body went still. What's he talking about? Mara called out, stepping forward despite Dante's warning to stay put. Victor's eyes shifted to her. Ah, Mrs. Vale. So good to finally meet you properly. Stay away from her, Dante said, his voice deadly. Or what? You'll kill me? You've had 3 years to do that, and you haven't. Because you know the truth. You know that if you kill me, everyone will know what you did. Mara's stomach dropped. Dante, what is he talking about? Dante didn't answer. Victor laughed. He didn't tell you. Of course he didn't. He's too ashamed. Shut your mouth, Dante growled. Alara didn't die because I wanted to hurt you, Dante. She died because she found out what you really do, what this business really is. And she was going to turn you in. Mara's breath caught. That's a lie, Dante said. Is it? She went to the police, Dante. She was going to testify against you, and you knew that if she did, everything would fall apart. So you made a choice. You chose your empire over your sister. I didn't kill her. No, but you didn't save her either. You let me take her. You let me use her as a message, because you knew that if she lived, if she talked, you'd lose everything. Mara felt like the ground was tilting beneath her. Dante, is that true? Dante finally looked at her, and the pain in his eyes was unbearable. It's not that simple. Did you let him take her? I tried to save her. I tried everything. But you didn't stop him. Dante's silence was answer enough. Mara felt her world shatter. Victor smiled. And there it is, the truth. Your husband is no better than I am, Mrs. Vale. In fact, he might be worse. At least I own what I am. Dante moved then, faster than Mara had ever seen him move. He lunged at Victor, and the two of them collided in a tangle of fists and fury. Mara stood frozen, watching, her mind screaming, and then someone grabbed her from behind. Mara screamed. The man's arm locked around her throat, cutting off her air. She clawed at his grip, panic flooding her veins, but he was too strong. Let her go, Dante roared, pulling away from Victor. Victor wiped blood from his mouth, his smile never faltering. Not until we finish our conversation. Dante's eyes met Mara's, and she saw something there that terrified her more than the man choking her. Desperation. Raw and unfiltered. Please, Dante said, his voice breaking on the word. Don't hurt her. This is between you and me. No, Dante, this is about showing you what it feels like. To watch someone you care about suffer. To know you can't save them. Victor nodded to the man holding Mara. Take her to the car. The man started dragging Mara backward. She kicked and fought, but it was useless. Dante, she choked out, and then a gunshot rang out. The man holding Mara crumpled. She fell forward, gasping for air, her vision blurring. Marco stood 10 feet away, gun raised, his face grim. Boss, we need to move, now. Dante didn't hesitate. He ran to Mara, pulling her into his arms. Are you hurt? I'm okay, she gasped. I'm okay. Victor was already moving toward the back exit, his remaining men covering his retreat. This isn't over, Dante. Yes, it is, Dante shouted back. He turned to Marco. Don't let him leave this building. Marco nodded and signaled to the team. They surged forward, cutting off Victor's escape. The fight was chaos. Mara stayed pressed against a crate, her whole body shaking, watching Dante move through the warehouse like something unleashed. He wasn't just fighting anymore. He was dismantling everything in his path. And then Victor was cornered. His men were down. The exits were blocked. He stood against the far wall, breathing hard, blood dripping from a cut above his eye. Dante approached slowly, a gun in his hand. It's over, Dante said. Victor laughed, bitter and broken. You think killing me ends this? There's always someone else. Always another Victor waiting in the wings. Maybe, but you won't be around to see it. Go ahead then. Pull the trigger. Prove to your wife that you're exactly what I said you are. Dante's hand didn't shake. His finger moved to the trigger, and then Mara spoke. Don't. Dante froze. He didn't turn around. Mara, don't kill him, Dante. He killed Alara. He tried to kill you. He deserves this. Maybe he does, but you don't deserve to carry that for the rest of your life. Dante's jaw clenched. You don't know what you're asking. Yes, I do. I'm asking you to be better than him, to choose something other than revenge. He won't stop. As long as he's alive, he'll keep coming after us. Then we'll deal with it, together. But not like this. Not by becoming the thing you hate. Victor sneered. Listen to her, Dante. Be the hero. Let me walk out of here. We'll see how long that lasts. Shut up, Dante said, his voice cold. Mara stepped forward, her legs unsteady but her voice clear. You told me you regret the life you chose, that you wish you could go back and do things differently. Well, here's your chance. Make a different choice. Right now. Dante stood there for what felt like an eternity, the gun still pointed at Victor's head. Mara could see the war happening inside him. Every muscle in his body was tense, his breathing ragged, his eyes burning with 3 years of grief and rage. And then, slowly, he lowered the gun. Marco, he said quietly. Marco stepped forward. Yeah, boss. Call the police. Tell them we have someone they've been looking for. Viktor Melnikov. Wanted for racketeering, murder, and about a dozen other charges. Viktor's face went pale. You're turning me in? I'm letting the law deal with you, something I should have done 3 years ago. You think they'll protect you? You think they won't come after you next? Probably, but at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror. Dante turned his back on Viktor, walking toward Mara. And I'll be able to look at her. Marco made the call. Within minutes, sirens echoed in the distance. Dante reached Mara and pulled her close. We need to go. Now. She nodded, her whole body trembling. They slipped out the side entrance just as police cars flooded the area, their lights painting the warehouse walls in blue and red. Marco had already arranged for a car to meet them 2 blocks away. They climbed in, and the driver took off into the night without a word. Mara sat in silence, staring out the window, her mind racing. Her throat still hurt where the man had grabbed her. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Dante sat beside her, his hands clenched in his lap, blood on his knuckles. Are you okay? He asked finally, his voice hoarse. I don't know. Mara, is it true? What Viktor said? About Alara? Dante's face crumpled. For a moment, he looked like he might break apart completely. Yes and no. That's not an answer. Alara did find out what I was involved in, and she did threaten to go to the police, but I didn't let Viktor take her. I tried to stop him. I did everything I could. But it wasn't enough. No. Dante's voice cracked. It wasn't enough. She called me that night, told me she was scared, that someone was following her. I told her to go somewhere public, to wait for me. But by the time I got there, she was gone. Viktor had already taken her. And you didn't go after her? I did. I tore the city apart looking for her. But Viktor knew I would. He used her as bait, set traps, ambushes. Every time I got close, he moved her somewhere else. And then, Dante's voice broke completely. And then he sent me a photo of her. And I knew she was already gone. That no matter what I did, I couldn't save her. Mara felt tears streaming down her face. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because it doesn't change anything. She's still dead. And I still failed her. You didn't fail her, Dante. Viktor killed her. That's on him, not you. I should have protected her better. I should have seen it coming. You should have had a brother who wasn't a monster. But you didn't. That's not your fault. Dante looked at her, his eyes red. Viktor's not my brother. He was my father's business partner. But Alara was my responsibility. My only family. And I let her down. You didn't let her down. You loved her. You tried to save her. You did everything a brother could do. It wasn't enough. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes we do everything right and still lose. That doesn't mean we failed. It just means the world is cruel. Dante pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe, and she held him back, letting him break, letting him grieve, letting him be something other than the untouchable man everyone else saw. When they got back to the penthouse, the sun was starting to rise. The city stretched out below them, bathed in gold and pink light, completely unaware of what had happened in that warehouse just hours before. Mara stood on the balcony, watching the world wake up, and felt something shift inside her. She'd almost died tonight. A stranger had put his hands around her throat and tried to drag her away to who knows what kind of fate. But she was still here, still breathing, still standing. And she realized something that surprised her. She wasn't afraid anymore. Not of Viktor, not of Dante's world, not of the life she'd chosen. She was angry. Dante joined her on the balcony, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He handed her one, and they stood in silence for a while, watching the sunrise. Thank you, he said finally, for tonight, for stopping me. I didn't do it for you, Mara said quietly. Dante looked at her, surprised. I did it for me, because I don't want to spend the rest of my life married to a murderer, because I don't want to wake up every morning next to someone who threw away everything good in himself for revenge, because She stopped, her voice catching. Because you what? Because I love you, you idiot, and I'm not letting you destroy yourself. Dante set down his coffee cup and pulled her into his arms. I love you too. I don't know when it happened. Maybe it was that first night in the rain. Maybe it was at the gala when you told Evan off. Maybe it was tonight when you stood between me and the worst decision of my life. But I love you, Mara, and I need you to know that." Mara kissed him, hard and desperate, tasting salt from tears. Hers or his, she couldn't tell. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. "What happens now?" she asked. "I don't know. The police are going to have questions. Victor's arrest is going to create a power vacuum. There are going to be people who try to fill it, people who might come after me. Then we deal with it, together." "Mara, I can't ask you to, You're not asking. I'm telling you, I'm not going anywhere." Dante looked at her for a long moment, and she saw something shift in his expression. Hope, maybe, or just exhaustion. "Okay. Okay. Okay? We do this together." The next few days were a blur. The police came to the penthouse, detectives with tired eyes and too many questions. Dante cooperated fully, turning over evidence he'd been collecting on Victor for years. Locations, transaction records, names of people Victor had hurt or killed. Mara sat beside him through every interview, holding his hand, reminding him he wasn't alone. Victor was formally charged with multiple counts of murder, racketeering, and conspiracy. The district attorney called it one of the biggest organized crime cases in the city's history, but the questions didn't stop with Victor. "Mr. Vale," Detective Rodriguez said during their third interview, "we appreciate your cooperation, but we need to address your own activities." Dante's face remained impassive. "What activities?" "You ran protection rackets, controlled territory, engaged in activities that, while not as violent as Melnikov's, were still illegal." "That's true." "You're admitting to criminal activity?" "I'm admitting that I made choices I'm not proud of, choices I want to make right." Rodriguez leaned back in his chair, studying Dante. "What does that mean?" "It means I want immunity in exchange for full cooperation. I'll give you everything I have on every criminal operation in this city. Names, locations, evidence, everything. And in exchange, you let me walk away and rebuild my life legitimately." "That's a big ask." "It's a fair trade. Without my information, you'll be chasing shadows for years. With it, you can clean up this city in months." Rodriguez looked at his partner, then back at Dante. "I'll have to talk to the DA. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere." After the detectives left, Mara turned to Dante. "Do you think they'll go for it?" "I don't know, but it's the best option we have. I can't keep living this life, Mara. I can't keep looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next Victor to come along. I want out, for real this time." "What will you do? If they give you immunity?" Dante was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about that. About what Alara would have wanted, what kind of legacy I want to leave. And I want to start a foundation, in her name, help kids who are in situations like she was, trapped in families involved in crime, give them a way out, education, support, a chance at a different life." Mara felt her chest tighten. "Dante, that's beautiful. Will you help me? I don't know the first thing about running a charity." "Of course I will." 2 weeks later, the DA's office called. They were offering Dante a deal, full immunity in exchange for his testimony and evidence against not just Victor, but every criminal operation he had information about. It would take months, maybe years. But when it was done, Dante would be free. He signed the papers without hesitation. The process was brutal. Dante spent hours with prosecutors, going through every detail of operations he'd been involved in or knew about. Some of the people he named were former associates, people who'd trusted him. It wasn't easy, and Mara could see the toll it took, but he never wavered. "I'm burning bridges," he told her one night, staring at files spread across the dining table. "People who I've worked with for years. They're going to see me as a traitor." "You're not a traitor. You're someone who's trying to make things right. Tell that to them." "I don't care what they think. Neither should you." Dante rubbed his face, exhausted. "What if I can't do this? What if I tear everything down and there's nothing left to build on?" Mara moved to his side, wrapping her arms around him. "Then we'll build from scratch. We'll figure it out. But you can't keep living in a world that's slowly killing you. You have to let it go." "I'm scared." It was the first time she'd ever heard him say those words. "I know," she said softly, "but you're not alone. You have me, and we're going to get through this." 3 months after Victor's arrest, Mara and Dante attended his trial. Mara had wanted to skip it, but Dante said he needed to see it through, needed to look Victor in the eye one more time and know that justice was being served. The courtroom was packed. Victor sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, his expression cold and unreadable. When Dante walked in, Victor's eyes locked on him, and Mara felt Dante tense beside her. The prosecution presented their case methodically. Evidence. Testimony from victims' families, records of murders, extortion, violence. The defense tried to paint Victor as a businessman who'd been framed, but the evidence was overwhelming. When it came time for Dante to testify, Mara watched him walk to the stand with his head held high. He was sworn in, and the prosecutor began asking questions. Mr. Vale, how long did you know the defendant? About 15 years. We worked in overlapping territories. And can you describe the nature of his operations? Dante went through it all. Victor's methods, his violence, the way he used fear to control people. And then the prosecutor asked, "Can you tell us about Alara Vale?" The courtroom went quiet. Dante took a breath. Alara was my sister. She was 19 years old. She was in college, studying to become a doctor. She found out about the work I was involved in and threatened to go to the police. Victor found out. He saw an opportunity to hurt me, so he kidnapped her. And then he killed her. How do you know it was the defendant? He sent me proof. Photos. A message. He wanted me to know what he'd done. Wanted me to know that I couldn't protect the people I loved. Victor's lawyer stood. Objection. This is speculation. It's not speculation, Dante said, his voice steady. I have the message. I've kept it for 3 years. It's in evidence. The judge allowed it. The prosecutor showed the message to the jury, a photo of Alara, and a note in Victor's handwriting. This is what happens when you cross me. Mara saw several jurors look away, their faces pale. When Dante stepped down, he walked past Victor without looking at him, but Victor spoke anyway. You're a dead man, Dante. You know that, right? Testifying against me, turning state's evidence. There are people out there who are going to come for you. Dante stopped, turned, looked Victor in the eye. Let them try, he said quietly. I'm not afraid of you anymore. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. They found Victor guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. When the verdict was read, Dante didn't smile, didn't celebrate. He just sat there staring at the table in front of him, his hands folded. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed them, cameras flashed, microphones were shoved in their faces. Mr. Vale, how do you feel about the verdict? No comment. Is it true you've been cooperating with law enforcement? No comment. Mrs. Vale, how does it feel to be married to a man with ties to organized crime? Mara stopped, turned to the reporter. My husband is a man who made mistakes and is trying to make them right. That's more than most people can say. Now, if you'll excuse us. She took Dante's hand and they walked to the car together, ignoring the shouted questions behind them. In the car, Dante was quiet. Mara didn't push. She just held his hand and let him process. Finally, he spoke. It doesn't feel like I thought it would. What do you mean? I thought I'd feel relief, closure, something, but I just feel empty. That's normal. Revenge doesn't fix grief. It just ends the chapter. So what now? How do I move forward? You build something new, something that honors Alara, something that makes her death mean something. Dante nodded slowly. The foundation. The foundation. They spent the next 6 months building the Alara Vale Foundation from the ground up. Dante used money from the legitimate parts of his business, properties he'd bought and sold over the years, investments that had nothing to do with his criminal activities. Mara helped him navigate the legal and administrative side, working with lawyers and accountants to set everything up properly. The foundation's mission was simple: provide scholarships and support to young people from families involved in crime who wanted a different path, education, mentorship, job training, a way out. It was exactly what Alara would have wanted. They held their first fundraising event on what would have been Alara's 23rd birthday. It was smaller than the galas Dante used to attend, maybe 100 people instead of 300, but it felt more meaningful. Mara wore a simple navy dress and stood beside Dante as he gave a speech. My sister believed in second chances, he said, his voice carrying through the room. She believed that people could change, that they could be better than their circumstances. I didn't always believe that, but she did. And this foundation is proof that she was right. We can't change the past, but we can change the future, one person at a time. The room erupted in applause. After the event, as they were cleaning up, Mara saw a familiar face near the door. Jenna. She was standing there awkwardly, holding a small envelope. Mara walked over. Hi. Hi. Jenna looked nervous. I wasn't sure if I should come, but I saw the invitation online and I wanted to support you. I'm glad you're here. Really? Really? Mara took a breath. I was angry at you for a long time for not standing up for me that night. But I've learned something over the past year. People aren't perfect. They make mistakes. They freeze when they should act. That doesn't mean they don't care. Jenna's eyes filled with tears. I should have been there for you. I'm so sorry. I know. And I forgive you. You do? I do. But things are different now. I'm different. And I need people in my life who can show up when it matters. I want to be that person. If you'll let me. Mara looked at her old friend, at the genuine remorse in her eyes, and made a decision. Okay, but we start over. Fresh. Fresh, Jenna agreed. I can do that. They hugged, and Mara felt another piece of her old life click into place. Not the same as before, but something new. Dante appeared at her side, and Jenna looked at him nervously. This is Dante, Mara said. My husband. I know. I've heard a lot about you. All bad, I hope, Dante said with a slight smile. Jenna laughed, surprised. Not all bad. After Jenna left, Dante pulled Mara close. You okay? Yeah, I am. Making peace with the past? Something like that. They stood in the empty event space, surrounded by the evidence of the life they were building together, and Mara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. A year after Victor's conviction, Mara and Dante moved out of the penthouse. They bought a house on the outskirts of the city. Nothing flashy, just a comfortable place with a yard and enough space to breathe. They adopted a dog, a golden retriever they named Scout, who had more energy than sense. Dante still worked with law enforcement occasionally, providing information when needed. But mostly, he focused on the foundation. They'd given out 30 scholarships in their first year, helped 15 kids get into college who otherwise wouldn't have been able to afford it. And slowly, Dante started to smile more, to sleep better, to look less like a man carrying the weight of the world. Mara found work with a nonprofit that helped women leaving abusive relationships. It turned out that surviving your own trauma made you pretty good at helping others through theirs. One evening, they were sitting on their back porch, watching Scout chase fireflies in the yard. Do you ever think about that night? Mara asked. The engagement party? Sometimes. Why? I was just thinking about how different my life would be if I'd stayed. If I'd begged Evan to take me back. If I'd shrunk myself down to fit into his world. You would have been miserable. I know, but I didn't know it then. I thought being chosen by someone, anyone, was enough, even if it meant giving up pieces of myself. Dante took her hand. And now? Now I know that being chosen isn't enough. You have to choose yourself first. You have to know your own worth before anyone else can see it. Is that what you did? Chose yourself? Eventually, with your help. You didn't need my help. You just needed someone to see you clearly, and then you saw yourself. Mara leaned her head against his shoulder. I love you, you know. I know, I love you too. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, Scout eventually collapsing at their feet, exhausted from his hunt. Can I tell you something? Dante said. Always. I used to think happiness was something other people got. People who made better choices. People who weren't broken. But sitting here with you, watching that ridiculous dog try to catch bugs, I realized I was wrong. About what? About being broken. I thought what happened with Alara broke me beyond repair, that I'd spend the rest of my life just going through the motions. But you showed me something. What's that? That broken things can still be beautiful, that you don't have to be whole to be worthy of love. You just have to be honest about where the cracks are. Mara felt tears sting her eyes. When did you get so wise? I learned from the best. They kissed, soft and slow, and Mara felt her heart swell. This was what love was supposed to feel like. Not perfect, not without struggle, but real. Built on honesty and choice and the decision to keep showing up, even when it was hard. 6 months later, Mara stood in the bathroom of their house, staring at a pregnancy test. 2 lines. Positive. Her hands shook as she set it down on the counter. She'd suspected for a few weeks. The exhaustion, the nausea, the way she couldn't stand the smell of coffee anymore. But seeing it confirmed was different. She was going to have a baby. She and Dante were going to have a baby. She walked out to the living room where Dante was working on grant applications for the foundation. "Hey," she said. "Can we talk?" He looked up, immediately concerned. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I have something to tell you." Dante set down his pen, giving her his full attention. "Okay." Mara sat down beside him, her heart racing. "I'm pregnant." For a moment, Dante just stared at her, and then his face broke into the biggest smile she'd ever seen. "You're serious?" "I'm serious." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "We're having a baby. We're having a baby. When did you find out?" "About 5 minutes ago." Dante laughed, the sound full of joy and disbelief. "Are you okay? How do you feel?" "Terrified, excited, nauseous. All normal, I think." "Dante, are we ready for this?" He pulled back, looking her in the eye. "Probably not, but I don't think anyone's ever really ready. We'll figure it out, together." "Together," Mara echoed. They spent the rest of the evening talking about names and nurseries and all the ways their lives were about to change. And later, lying in bed, Dante's hand resting on her still flat stomach, Mara thought about how far they'd come, from a rain-soaked night and a desperate proposal to this. A home, a life, a future. She thought about Alara, the girl she'd never met but whose absence had shaped so much of their story, and she made a silent promise. "If it's a girl, we'll name her Alara, and we'll tell her about the aunt she never got to meet, about her strength and her kindness and her belief in second chances. And we'll make sure she knows that broken people can heal, that mistakes don't define you, that love is a choice you make every single day." The pregnancy wasn't easy. Mara was sick for most of the first trimester, exhausted for the second, and uncomfortable for the third. But Dante was there through all of it, bringing her crackers when she couldn't keep anything else down, rubbing her feet when they swelled, reading parenting books late into the night. The foundation continued to grow. They hired staff, expanded their scholarship program, started a mentorship initiative. It was everything Alara would have wanted. On a warm day in early autumn, Mara went into labor. Dante drove her to the hospital, holding her hand the entire way, his face pale but determined. "You're going to be fine," he told her. "I know. I'm going to be there the whole time. I know that too. I love you. I love you too. Now drive faster before I have this baby in your car." The labor was long and painful, and nothing like the calm, peaceful experience Mara had seen in movies. It was messy and terrifying and the most intense thing she'd ever experienced. But then the doctor placed a tiny, screaming baby girl in her arms, and everything else fell away. She was perfect. Red-faced and angry and absolutely perfect. Dante stood beside the bed, tears streaming down his face, staring at his daughter like she was a miracle. "She's here," he whispered. "She's really here." "She is." "What should we name her?" Mara looked down at the baby in her arms, at her tiny fingers and her dark hair, and she knew. Alara Rose Vales. Dante's face crumpled. He bent down and kissed Mara's forehead, then gently touched his daughter's cheek. "Hello, Alara," he said softly. "I'm your dad, and I promise I'm going to do better by you than I did by the person you're named after. I'm going to protect you and love you and make sure you never doubt for a second that you're worth everything." Mara watched him, her heart so full it hurt. This was what healing looked like. Not perfect, not without scars, but real. They'd both been broken by life, discarded by people who should have valued them, but they'd found each other in the wreckage and built something beautiful. A marriage, a foundation, a family. And as Mara sat in that hospital bed, holding her daughter while Dante held them both, she understood something fundamental about life. You don't need to be chosen by the world to matter. You don't need to be perfect to be worthy of love. You just need to be brave enough to choose yourself, to know your worth, to refuse to let other people's limitations define your value. Evan had looked at her and seen someone lacking, someone not good enough, someone to discard. But Dante had looked at her and seen strength, resilience, worth, and eventually she'd learned to see it too. That was the real transformation. Not the marriage or the money or the new life, but the moment she stopped waiting for someone else to validate her existence and started validating it herself. 3 years after that rain-soaked night, Mara Vales sat in a rocking chair in her daughter's nursery, feeding Alara while Scout slept at her feet, and Dante worked quietly in the next room. And she was happy, not because her life was perfect. It wasn't. There were still hard days, still moments when she doubted herself or worried about the future or wondered if she was doing everything wrong. But she was happy because she'd learned that perfection was a lie people sold to make you feel insufficient. Real life was messy. It was complicated. It was full of mistakes and do-overs and moments where you had to choose between easy and right. And she'd learned to choose right, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Because that's what love was, what life was. Not a fairy tale, not a romance novel, but a choice, a decision to keep showing up, to keep trying, to keep believing that tomorrow could be better than today. Mara Whitlock had walked out of that engagement party broken and humiliated, convinced she wasn't enough. But Mara Vale knew better. She was enough. She'd always been enough. She just needed to believe it, and now she did.